I want to introduce you to Jerry Lamagna, who is here with us, and I will be interviewing him. Jerry Lamagna is a licensed clinical social worker from New York who provides counseling and therapy services in Westfield, New Jersey, and Manhattan. He's specialized in areas of trauma, depression, anxiety, PTSD, dissociation, low self-esteem, and others. He's also a senior faculty member of the AEDP Institute in New York. So welcome, Jerry. This is your audience. And you're being translated into Spanish and Italian, and you can speak at your rhythm because our translators are very good.
Wonderful. Thank you, Enrique, for that warm introduction. It's wonderful to have an opportunity to be here with you and with all of those who've signed up for the course, and through the miracle of the internet and through the miracle of these wonderful translators, we can actually have hopefully some information coming to you, and perhaps if we have time at the end, a little back and forth as well about what you will be hearing during our time together. So I'm excited to have a discussion with you. In my mind, I was thinking that it would almost be like you and I are sitting having a cup of tea or cappuccino, sitting at a table, except the table is big enough for over 100 people to be able to sit around and be involved in the conversation about AEDP. So I look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Jerry. So how about starting by introducing what is AEDP? What does it mean for anybody who's new to this model?
Sure. So AEDP stands for Accelerated Experiential Dynamic Psychotherapy. And it was a model that was created by Dr. Diana Fosha in the late 1990s. She had a book that came out in the year 2000 called The Transforming Power of Affect. And this was the beginning of AEDP being introduced to the field of psychology and psychotherapy. So in terms of answering your question more directly, I just want to take a moment and speak about theory, right? So, we understand the helpfulness of theory is that with each model, it allows the clinician to focus their attention on the parts of the model that are thought to be important for that particular model, and to not bring attention to the things that are not considered important to the model, right? So in AEDP, it is an approach that brings together elements of experiential therapy and relational therapy and psychodynamic psychotherapy, and integrates it with ideas drawn from the study of neuroplasticity and positive emotion. And
it's very complete.
Beg your pardon?
It's very complete.
It's very complete. It integrates many different kinds of areas of work, and I hope to speak quite a bit more during our time together about those particular facets. Yeah. What I can say is that, in our field, the traditional field of psychotherapy, at least the historical foundation is very much founded on the study of pathology, on psychopathology, on seeing the medical model view in which we're focusing on illness, we're focusing on abnormality. And one of the things that I love and find very fresh about the model that I use, AEDP, is that we recognize that alongside psychopathology, there is also this other capacity, the capacity to heal, the capacity to grow, the capacity to adapt, and that capacity is wired into each human being just as much as any problems that could develop for clients as well. So we really try to take a very complete view of the clients, recognizing, in fact, that speaks a little bit, Enrique and I had a conversation a month or so ago before, and we were talking about some of the important elements of the
Yes.
model. And one of them is transformance, right? The
Exactly.
idea of transformance. So we're all familiar with the term resistance, right? This is the force within the psyche that seeks to maintain sameness. It privileges self-protection over change and contact with inner experience, right? So we are all familiar with what resistance is. Well, what transformance is its psychological counterpart. It is the force within the psyche that moves the individual towards healing, towards change, towards expansion. And so not only do we address the problematic issues, but we're also wanting to develop the client's capacity to heal and to grow. So we want to deal with the client's problems, but we also are not looking only to end symptoms, right? Where we are wishing to help our clients to thrive and to grow and to flourish in their lives. It's
Jerry,
not enough just to have the symptoms go away. We would like the client to be able to have the fullest experience of themselves as they would like to be able to have.
exactly. I have one question that maybe is not in our something, but just to make it as part of a flexible interview.
Yes.
And when we say accelerated, does that mean brief psychotherapy or not?
So we're careful not to use the word brief, right? We use the word accelerated because there is an underlying element of the model that is about activating this healing capacity from the very beginning. From the very first minutes of the very first session, we are already beginning to try to help the client to have new experiences, right? Because neuroplasticity and change is about the client having new experiences of safety within their own body, experiences of interpersonal safety with us, experiences where it's safe for them to feel and to explore whatever it is that's burdening them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's recognized right from the beginning accelerates the healing process. Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And when you say experiential therapy, is it phenomenology? Phenomenology?
Yeah. So by experiential, we mean that nearly everything that we do with our client involves the body in some kind of a way. If we're working with something from the past, a memory, something that feels stuck for somebody, we are working in the body with that. We're not just analyzing it. We're not just talking about it. We're not just looking at cognitions, but we're looking at the felt sense in the body as we explore what's meaningful to the individual. So, but what's wonderful about AEDP is that we don't just process painful events and painful feelings that are occurring within the client's body. We're also exploring the felt sense of what it feels like to be with us as clinicians, right? So when we're exploring the relationship, for example, with the client, I'm inviting them to notice how it feels in their body to be with me, how it feels in their body if I offer them an affirmation, how it feels in their body if I express some compassion or understanding for their situation. So in the relationship, we're still working in the body. What's experienced in the body in relation to that? We also work with positive emotions, not just painful emotions. So if a client, as a result of the work, starts feeling some feelings of strength or clarity or forgiveness or whatever feeling, gratitude, whatever feeling they may have, we're going to approach those feelings in the same way that we approach grief and anger. And then finally, the last piece that I think is really important is that in AEDP, we recognize that the experience of change itself is a very rich experience for us to process at a somatic level. So as somebody begins to shift, as somebody begins to change physiologically, emotionally, as a result of the processing, we're also exploring what it feels like for them to sit up taller, what it feels for them to feel stronger, what it feels for them to let go of something painful they have been hiding for years or decades.
Exactly. So this is how the neuroplasticity gets activated?
Yes, right. So neuroplasticity is this idea that that the brain can change and that the brain changes in response to new experience. So what we want to be able to do, and this is borne out by the work of Bruce Ecker and memory reconsolidation, that what we want to do is we want to be able to meet a problematic or a painful experience with something new, something that disconfirms, something that counters the old learning so that the client can have a new experience, that they can move beyond sort of the ways that their implicit memory has learned to survive and protect themselves in their earlier life, and to be able to put aside things that are no longer serving them in their current lives.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And from this experience and this learning, how is AEDP different from other models that you are aware of? Can you make some brief distinctions or comparisons if they are suitable?
Sure, sure. So I also wanted to say, because this wasn't necessarily part of the introduction, but for those who are here in the meeting, I am also trained in psychodrama. I'm also trained in EMDR. I'm also trained in IFS, right? So I have many different tools in my toolbox, you know, that I have learned and that I have used and that I still use. And AEDP, in fact, is a very flexible model that allows us to bring techniques and ways of working from these other models that do not need to be discarded. They can be integrated into the AEDP approach. And that's what I found most useful when I first learned about AEDP in 2003 when I met Diana. So what were we speaking about again? Oh, what makes it different?
Well, it makes it unique.
What makes it unique? So I think what makes it unique is the way that the model integrates the internal with the external, the past with the present. So for example, as I said earlier, we're working in the body. We're working with everything that's meaningful. In fact, anybody here familiar with Alan Sroufe? He's a child developmental researcher at University of Minnesota.
Yes.
And he has a quote that I love, where he says that anything that is meaningful to a human being is so because it is infused with affect. It is infused with emotion. It is infused with some kind of charge that gives it meaning to the individual. And so we recognize that the body is the instrument that resonates this experience, this felt experience within the individual. So as I said earlier, whether we're working in the relationship, like many models do experiential work with the past, you know, Gestalt therapy and EMDR and other forms of therapy, we do that in AEDP, and we also bring the body into the relationship, into the sensations that happened in the experience of feeling recognized, the experience of being accompanied, the experience of feeling heard, of being respected, of being cared about, right? So these are things that we explore as well in AEDP in the body. So in that way, it has a very relational element to it. As I said, it also has a very unique focus on the experience of change. So if I have a submissive client, somebody who has generally been submissive, who begins to start feeling energized in their body, they begin feeling animated in a way that is starting to bring about a sense of assertiveness, right? We're not just looking for what's broken in the client. We're not just focused on pathology. We also want to help the client strengthen their contact with these elements of self that are wholesome, you know, that are mobilizing, that are animating healthy, adaptive action tendencies.
Yes, yes. Very beautiful, Jerry. Thank you so much. And where does AEDP come from? What's the story? How did it emerge from from the
Good
field?
question. Good question. Diana Fosha had initially been trained as a psychoanalyst, and she took part in a study group with Habib Davanloo, who is the founder of intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy. She was studied in his classes, I think probably in the mid to late 80s, if I'm correct. And she was in the class with other master clinicians like Michael Alpert and Lee McCullough, right? And they were in the studies together, and they were all very impressed with the speed with which people changed in ISTDP. However, there was a lot of negative feelings about the level of confrontation and about sort of a single-minded focus on psychopathology. So Diana Fosha, as did Lee McCullough and Michael Alpert, sort of branched off. And so AEDP is from the lineage of David Mallin's short-term dynamic psychotherapy, and has become its own model from that. But it has branched off into other ways. It is really because Diana Fosha is the developer, her appreciation for attachment theory, John Bowlby, the work of Donald Winnicott, the work of Ferenczi, a lot of this important work in psychoanalysis and psychodynamics also figures into her work in ways that ISTDP does not. So ISTP, more challenge, less joining. And in AEDP, there's more of a sense of the need for safety, more emphasis on the idea that we call undoing aloneness. And maybe now's a good time to speak about that, right? In AEDP, we see that psychopathology is a response to the unwilled and unwanted absence or abandonment that comes in the wake of traumatic experiences or experiences of loss. So there is this sense of not only is the experience of violation or the moment of loss traumatic for the individual, but so is what occurs afterwards. So is what follows. And so a big piece of what it is that we're doing is recognized as developing that relationship so that not only is the client developing the capacity to feel safe in their own skin, but we're also helping them to develop the ability to feel safe and to begin to trust with a true other.
The true other, that's also a very important distinction in AEDP, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, right? In most psychotherapies, we are trained to mirror our clients, right? But in AEDP, we go beyond that. We invite our clients to be authentic with us, and we are challenged as AEDP therapists to be authentic with them.
Yes,
we maintain therapeutic boundaries, of course, and we show up not as experts, not as people who are up here in relation to the patient down here, but as a human being, and it gives us a lot of freedom to be able to be more ourselves and to care about our clients in an explicit way.
Yes. Thank you. I wanted to go back just to mention this point of undoing aloneness and how, because there's been a lot of press, even in mainstream press, about the toxic effects of solitude or unwanted aloneness, isolation.
Yes.
And how that's a pervasive experience underlying depression, anxiety, and trauma in general.
Yes.
And how AEDP really trains clinicians, right, to be able to break that isolation in some way. How would you say that?
So as you're speaking, Enrique, what comes to my mind is this quote that Diana often says. She says that when we are trying to evaluate an intervention that occurs, it is not just what we do, our intervention, that we evaluate. When we do an intervention, the evaluation comes from what we do and how the client responds to what we do. So in this area of undoing aloneness, for example, I may invite a client, can you check in with me for a moment? Right? Maybe they're saying, I'm all alone. Okay. And we validate that they're feeling alone in their life, et cetera, et cetera. And at the same time, we invite them to look on the screen or to look at us in the room if we're in the same office and say, can you just check in with me for a moment? If you really tune into my voice, if you check in with my eyes, how do you experience me right now? What do you notice?
Exactly.
Do you have a sense that I'm here with you? Do you have a sense that I'm preoccupied? What's your experience of me here with you? And oftentimes they'll say, well, I sense that you want to help me and that you care. And I'll say, well, can we just take a moment to notice how it feels inside if you allow yourself to just feel a little bit of that care?
Yeah.
Notice how you experience that inside. And we would undo the aloneness that way as the client begins to be explicit in receiving the care, explicit in taking it in and experiencing the effect of the medicine of contact, human contact.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So we had also mentioned about transformance, but you spoke about it already. So which is the innate force for healing that we have inside, right?
Right. Well, what I could do is I could speak about it in more specific terms clinically, right? So, for example, for those people who are going to be taking the course in January, I'm going to be bringing video clips from my work with my clients to illustrate what has been offered in the pre-recorded material. So in one of the tapes that I'll be showing, there will be a client who, on one hand, is saying, I feel like a robot. I feel very disconnected from myself inside, right? And on the other hand, he says, I want to be able to live with an open heart. I want to be able to feel my children. When I'm with my children, I want to be able to feel them. I want to be able to feel my love for them.
Yeah.
So when we start moving towards the feelings, there would be an unconscious shutting down of the feelings, right? So there's the conscious, I want this for myself.
Yeah.
And then there's the automatic response to protect the heart based on what happened earlier in their life, in their childhood, et cetera, et cetera. So I would poll for the client. I would say, I heard you say just a few moments that you want to live with an open heart. So I'm wondering if you and I can move towards having an experience that would allow you to touch into that love that you spoke about a few moments ago. And then we have techniques that we use to help activate those feelings. In this example, love, right? Or care or warmth or affection, and to track it in the body, just like an EMDR therapist would track a target in the body and just going with the processing.
Perfect, perfect. One of the things that's very important for me to ask you is it is said that AEDP is a four-state model.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to everybody here what is it, the four-state model?
Okay, so AEDP is not an approach where we have a theory that we try to fit life into.
Mm-hmm.
AEDP as a theory is built on the observations of what we've seen with our clients, the things that help them to change and the things that cause them to resist or close down, right? So this idea of phenomena is very much a part of what it is that we're looking to do. And so, so help me out here, Enrique. Just, can you give me crystallize?
Yes, so when we track what's going on in the client, the AEDP therapist looks at where their consciousness is in these stages of inner psychic world, right?
That's right. So there's a trajectory that we have observed over and over and over again in the work, that we've divided this trajectory into 4 states. State 1 is the state in which the client is essentially saying no to making contact with their feelings, no to making meaningful contact with us. The defenses are dominant, right? And the resistance is dominant, right? Or the anxiety around making contact is dominant, right?
Exactly.
So we worked to help the clients to be able to do what we call dropping down in ADP, to move from state 1 to state 2, to move from their head to their heart and the rest of their body, to move from self-protection to connection, and to connection with themselves and connection with us. In state 2, this is the phase in which the client is meeting with and processing their grief, processing their anger, processing their remorse, processing their fear, processing their aloneness, processing whatever painful feelings there are there. And when the client experiences that to completion, they often will report feeling, I feel lighter, I feel clearer, I feel stronger, right? So
Yeah.
most therapies, most experiential therapies like Gestalt therapy, et cetera, would say at the end of the breakthrough, we're finished.
Exactly.
We just do debriefing, and then we put closure on
E-
every.
Even IFS, when it's unburdening, there was this discussion with Dick Schwartz and Diana Fosha, and Dick Schwartz said this: after you unburden the part, that's it. But Diana Fosha said, no, this is on process to completion. But then there's stage 3, you know,
Right. So
information.
exactly. So after a person has this unburdening or this resolution experience, they find themselves in a new place. They find themselves in a new territory. Is everything healed? No. But the client started at point A when they came in to your office. They've worked through their defenses. They arrive at their core feelings. We call them core affects. And we see these core affects as the fuel that propels the client through these 4 states, right? So the client cries, the client gets angry, and they work through this experience to completion. When they arrive at the other point, they feel different. They feel like their body's different. They feel like how they're looking at themselves is different. How they see the past is different. And
Or
so
vulnerable.
that's right, exactly. And so we process these experiences. Maybe the client feels a sense of pride for having survived their childhood, right? They feel a sense of mastery, or maybe they feel a sense of mourning. They really get more connected to all of what they lost, right? So there may be a mourning of what they missed as a result of what occurred in their earlier lives. They may feel a sense of excitement and hopefulness about the future.
Yeah.
They may feel a sense of fear, like, I don't know what's coming next, right? So all of these feelings are the kinds of feelings that we associate with state 3, what comes after the breakthrough. And we process these in the body. If we continue to process these kinds of feelings in the body, the client reaches the 4th state, which we call core state.
Yeah.
Core state is the 4th state. And if we think of state 3 as a transformational state that is mediated primarily by the sympathetic nervous system, it tends to be lively and full of energy, whether it's crying or whether it's pride or whether it's appreciation or gratitude. It's lively, right? But when we get to state 4, the client has more of a parasympathetic calming kind of response. We keep moving through these experiences, and we have what I like to call, for those of you who know yoga, I like to call it the shavasana of AEDP, right? You've done this hard work. You felt all of these painful feelings. You come out the other side and you feel, there's some relief. The tension is no longer in my body. I'm seeing things in a lighter way. I'm seeing myself with more lightness, more calm, more clarity. And I feel more authentically me. I feel more myself. And so we process what that feels like. State 4 is very much about feeling themselves. And one other beautiful thing that I love about state 4 is that at that stage, the relationship between therapist and client becomes very much like Martin Buber's I-thou type of relationship. There's a humanizing of both the therapist and the client that feels without qualification. That is just, we create something bigger than the sum of our parts.
Like a meeting of 2 souls, or like an encounter, some sort of?
Yes, exactly. And it feels, oftentimes clients will speak in a way that sounds like poetry, that sounds like a wisdom. And even they say, where is this coming from? You hear the error signals, from neuroplasticity. They say, this is weird. I've never talked like this before. And here come these beautiful things come out of their mouth that are so profound and so meaningful. So these are the 4 states. We go from closed to open to resolved to experiencing and celebrating and processing this new self that emerges through.
So it brings the client from processing to transformation and then to some kind of transcendentals, but it's like inner state, but not disembodied and not hypnotic, but really felt and really in connection.
Yes, everything is embodied. That's the experiential element we were speaking about earlier. Everything is tracked through the body.
So the AEDP therapist, or the people, I have trained as an AEDP therapist, but for the people who haven't, how is the work that as a therapist you have to go through yourself to deliver this work to clients? Can you talk about that process and that stance as well? I don't know.
Sure. And I smile when you say that, because I'm one of the lucky people who gets to teach the immersion course to people from all over the world. And many of the clinicians that come are impressed with the model, but they also say, wow, this is powerful for me, as even just watching the tapes, right? It's powerful for me. And for us as therapists, we vicariously get to experience with our clients this healing process as well. And AEDP is a model that requires as much bravery from us as it asks of the client, right? We invite them to go to these places inside that are very tender, that are very profound, that are very deep. And in order for us to accompany them and to be able to be midwives to these transformational moments, we too need to bring our authentic selves into this experience. We need to be regulating our own internal experience as we're helping them move through their own. And what I can say is what I found over years is that by doing the model, you begin to develop a trust in the model. You begin to recognize trust in your own skills and being able to help clients move through the painful places until they reach that point where there's like a tipping point. They break through and tip into this other more open, spacious way of experiencing themselves.
Yes, I really like that, and how it facultates and provides a platform for the therapist to go beyond what we've been trained and to go really into deep connection with ourselves. Yes. That will be felt by the client as authentic, as real, as another person really wanting to reach out for the best.
Exactly.
And not scared of the engagement.
Exactly. And it's interesting. I have a lot of clients who have had therapy before. And when they come to my office, oftentimes they are struck by how real I'm being with them, how relaxed I'm being with them, how I don't take notes on paper when I do my AEDP sessions. My face is not in paper. My face is really attuned. I'm focusing moment to moment on what's happening with the client. We call that attunement. We call this moment to moment dyadic mindfulness.
Right. It's like a tracking.
Tracking. Yes, absolutely. We're tracking what's happening moment to moment. And this is how we know we are where we are in that trajectory of the 4 states, because each of those states have different characteristics, different qualities that the client will manifest. Yeah.
Very good. And, for the folks here, when it comes to processing, like in EMDR, the processing happens through the eye movement. In IFS, is with the parts getting offloaded or really doing the ritualistic, going through the parts work. But how does it take place the processing in AEDP?
Okay, so first let me say that I'll mention some of the specific ways that we do it in AEDP, but I also want to say that AEDP does not mandate how you help a client to get to their feelings. If you're an art therapist, if you're a movement therapist, if you're using other techniques from other models that you use, it doesn't matter to us in AEDP how you get to the breakthrough. It just is when you're done with the breakthrough, this is when we begin to really explore the client in this new space that they're in.
With the processing.
Right. So in AEDP, as we said, core affect is the fuel that fuels the client's movement through the 4 states. It's like the fuel. And so we want to do whatever we can to help deepen the client's contact with their feelings. So one technique that we use frequently is called a portrayal. And a portrayal is essentially a form of imagery in which the client imagines a part of themselves, imagines their grandmother, imagines a perpetrator, imagines somebody. And there is an opportunity in that imagined experience to make contact with the feelings that come up with that experience. So for example, if I have a client who's working with a part of themselves, I might ask them, can you let yourself see that 11-year-old you that you once were? And then I'd invite them to look into their eyes and to their face. What do you see? What do you pick up on as you see that 11-year-old? And they'll say, maybe they look lonely or they look sad or whatever. And then I will say, when you see the sadness in their face, how do you feel towards them? Right? And so we work towards having this experience of being felt, heard, seen. How is it for the 11-year-old to feel your care? What are they noticing in their body as your care comes to them?
Yeah.
How do you feel offering your care?
Yeah.
And then we process that. We use this technique called meta-processing, which is a very important intervention. We're inviting a client to say, what is it like? What is it like for your 11-year-old to feel your care? What is it like for you to see how your care is helping the little boy or girl relax or feel safe, maybe for the first time in a long, long time? Right? We also may do a portrayal with somebody with rage. You know, somebody is looking at the father who they have a tremendous amount of anger with, and I'll say, see this person when they're saying this hurtful thing. How are you feeling towards your father? I'm feeling really angry. I'm feeling this energy coming into my fists, right? And so we work with those kinds of energies too. Every feeling, every core affect has an adaptive action tendency that's associated with it. And we want to help the client in their imagination to move through the imagined fulfillment of that action tendency, whether it's hugging a little inner child or whether it's pushing or shaking or whatever, somebody who they're having a lot of angry feelings about. So also there I'll do, if there are people who have had, say, a grandparent that they didn't get to say goodbye to before they passed away. We can have a portrayal where we have the person imagine that they're by the bedside of this loved one. Can you see this loved one? What do you see in their eyes? Is there something you want to let them know? Something you want to share from your heart that you would like them to know? How are they taking in what you're saying? What do you see in their eyes? Is there anything they're saying back to you? Right? Because oftentimes, I'm sure many people here who do parts work can recognize that oftentimes when parts speak for themselves, they're really speaking from the unconscious. A lot of what comes out is even a surprise to the client.
Yes.
Right? So that's kind of the magic of it, is it really integrates the unconscious and the conscious and helps to bring together that kind of experience into some kind of fulfillment and integration.
Thank you. Thank you. And just for the records, because now we are all facing an increased awareness of dissociative disorders everywhere around the world in clinical practice. And what would you say about the AEDP way to treat, consider, approach dissociative disorders.
Okay, so first I want to say is treating dissociative disorders is very challenging, regardless of what model that you use.
Yeah.
It's so what we tried to do, actually, Carrie Gleiser, who is a colleague of mine and also another faculty member who actually just moved to Italy, and will probably be doing trainings in Italy probably in the near future. She and I wrote some papers on using AEDP for working with dissociation. And one of the ways that we conceptualize the work is like a triangle. We use a lot of triangles in AEDP, right? So at one point of the triangle, you have the client, who's sitting in your office. At another point, you have the dissociated part. And at the third point, you have us, the clinician. And so we can work. I can work directly with the part and work to develop the part having experiences of safety, having experiences of being heard and acknowledged and recognized. I can work to help the client have an experience with the part directly, where I'm facilitating more interaction between the two of them, right? So there are these different ways that we can take the techniques that we use in regular AEDP and begin to also apply it to working with multiplicity, beginning with very, very small, very, very basic kinds of ways of building trust, building safety, and building conveying to the system, the dissociative system, that we're here to find some kind of resolution that settles things for every part, right?
Yeah.
We want to think of it as a we. In regular AEDP, we are always thinking in a collaborative way, me and the client. When we work with dissociative systems, we are always working towards developing this sense of we, of collaboration, as best we can in the therapy. And of course, all the challenges that we see in dissociation happen in AEDP, and we have our own particular ways that we work with them. But it's along the lines of these portrayals and these different kinds of dialogues that we can have, different kinds of new experiences that we support a client in having. And this jumpstarts this neuroplasticity process that we spoke about earlier on.
Yes, I'm putting in the chat the newsletter link for the Italians and for the Spanish speakers, so I can send them a copy of the paper.
Oh, wonderful.
If yeah, about AEDP and dissociation by you and Carrie. If they sign up, if you have not already in the newsletter, if you're Italian, you could use the Italian link because you will be in the Italian language list. So if you want to receive a copy of the paper and the video, please just make sure you sign up. It's easier for me. So thank you. We can continue and just be ready to wrap. So what would you tell to everybody here about the January course that we've been preparing for quite some months?
Yeah, so the original idea behind creating this course is we wanted to have an opportunity to offer a course that was deep enough and rich enough to cover all of the fundamental elements of the model. We didn't want it to be too small, where you just get just tiny little sketch of the different elements of AEDP. We wanted something that was going to be a little bit of a fuller experience. So each module in this course, one will be about the fundamentals, where I'll go into fundamentals more. Another one is about the four-state model, which will go into more detail. Another one will go into the use of relationship in AEDP. Another one will go specifically into how we work with change experiences of change, et cetera, et cetera. So each module will zero in, will tune into a particular facet of the approach. And there'll be between 45 minutes and 60 minutes of material that will help give you a good feel for the model. And when I come in January for the Zoom meetings, I'll be showing some videotapes of sessions So you'll actually get to see actual sessions with actual clients. You'll see how all of what's in the material actually plays out in the office. And there'll be opportunities for questions and all kinds of discussion in response to those videotapes as well.
Yes. I want to explain to everybody the dynamic of the online course. Is a very rich model, and we have tested, because you have Jerry in a recorded lesson that you can watch as many times from your home. One lesson per module, so it won't be overwhelming. It will have reading materials. And then you're asked to watch one video and then attend to a live online session. And that'd be module 1. And then the next week we do module 2. And the next week we do module 3. So each module will have one live online and one video and one article for you to read and to complete. So in total, you will have like 12 hours of training, and it will last for a month. And then you will have it available on the platform for 6 months for you to complete. So it's a very well modality to learn the theory, the basis, the structure of the model. And if you're really enthusiastic about it, then you can decide if you want to come to Barcelona, where we will hold an European immersion program for the European people. And anybody, if you want to come from Latin America, you're also welcome. But for Latin Americans, we have a higher discount because we know that the economy is different from here. So here I put in the chat the discount code, where it gives 25% discount to professional psychologists, psychiatrists, when you enroll in the course in January, and 30% for Latin Americans. So just for you to know. And now we're nearly ready the end. And I want to give the opportunity to anybody who has questions for Jerry or for me about the organization of the course. I'll be glad to respond. So make sure you use your digital hand. It's in the button that says raise hand. And you just click it, and I'll see you pop in, and I'll give you can unmute and ask your question in your language, and then Jerry will get that translation. So you can speak to him in Italian or Spanish, and he will listen to you in English. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yes, what's your name? I don't see your name. Well, you can unmute.
Oh, hi, it's Rafida from the UK.
Yes, Sophia, go ahead.
The question I would like to ask is in regard when a clinician would expect during assessment or formulation that the best approach is ADP. That would be happening in which, based on which criteria would we know that is appropriate to apply it?
Okay, so it's an interesting question, and one of the things that we did bring over from our short-term dynamic roots is this idea of trial therapy, in the sense that when I meet with a client the first time, I'm not just getting a genogram or the specific information about their parents, et cetera, but I'm also getting information about how they respond to their own feelings, how they react. It's kind of like when you think of the adult attachment interview, and you ask these kind of questions that are loaded, that have a lot of emotion attached to them. The coders are able to see that there's an impact on the psyche when they try to speak about these things that have emotional charge to them. So in a similar way, when we're doing the AEDP, we are getting to know the client, helping them to get to know us, and we're learning right away which clients are the ones that are able to make some kind of connection. Now, since affect is pretty much a universal experience for human beings, unless somebody is actively psychotic or someone is actively, high on drugs or these kinds of things, if there's some sobriety, if there's some kind of medication management for these issues, then there's no reason why people can't benefit from AEDP as long as the person is going at a pace. Remember, I mentioned attunement as being a very important element. We're constantly tracking and seeing if how the client is responding is indicating that we need to slow down, if we need to titrate some of what's happening experientially or not. I don't know what I would say per se for clients on the autistic spectrum of that nature as well. But because it's a spectrum, it's really hard to give an easy response because it is a spectrum. And again, you need to go case by case to decide, if somebody could benefit from this kind of work. But
thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Can I just add one more quick thing about that? The emphasis on the relationship and that aspect of it is something that's pretty much universal in any kind of therapy, right? So even if you put to the side some of the more deeper, more evocative kinds of techniques in the beginning, you can still work with clients and really work within the relationship or work with the client and their relationship with themselves, right? And you're not going deep into the past, into trauma, into these kinds of places, but you're working more in the here and now, still experientially, but in the here and now.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have maybe one more last question if there's anybody, and if not, we can just close. Let's give one more minute if somebody wants to ask a question. Okay. So it seems we have reached our end for today, and I want to thank Jerry. I want to thank our team of translators from Italy and Spain. And I want to thank each one of you for joining us, and feel free to contact me should you need more information about the course.
Can I say one more thing, Enrique? Just want to say if people their curiosity is getting piqued a little bit, if you want to learn a little bit more about the model, you can, and if you speak English or maybe through Google Translate, you may be able to get some information. But if you go to the AEDP Institute website,
yeah,
there's lots of free material there, papers that you can see, videos that are available for you to look at, so you can learn a little bit more about the approach.
Yes. Thank you. That's so good. We have also here an online course with Ben Lipton that we translated with subtitles.
Wonderful.
But let's look forward to your course, which is a more elaborated, and we look forward to seeing you here if you want, and have a great time. And we have another session of a webinar in November with Jerry. If you want to join us, you're free to come. It will be more questions, more interview but feel free to do this. Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much for coming. It's good to see your faces and to feel your energy here.
Thank you, everybody.